Don, thank you for being here today.
Great to be with you, Riley. Thanks for having me on to discuss this very important topic.
Yes, so on the surface, this seems to be maybe somewhat reasonable, but there's always more to the picture than meets the eye. So I want to hear your insights and your analysis of what this new
Right.
law means and why it actually might be dangerous.
Well, dangerous can be an understatement. First of all, it is true that there's a shortage of physicians in rural areas in North Carolina. I grew up in Washington County, one of the smallest and actually the poorest county in North Carolina. So I know about
Mm,
this for a fact. However, it's like they say you don't cure a headache with a cyanide pill. And the problem with this is twofold. When you laid out some of the lesser uh, professional requirements that are set forth under this bill, they're obvious. The biggest one is you don't even have to be a practicing physician as long as you've had a license within 5 years. So you could find folks that are not licensed. But let's put the entire substandard qualifications issue aside for a moment.
okay.
The bigger problem I have here is this goes into what I've been saying on the campaign trail. The problem that we're having is not just illegal immigration, which President Trump has largely shut down at the Mexican border, especially, but legal immigration. And when you go back to the 1965 Immigration Act, the Hart Celler Act, what happened is we begin to open up the United States to really to more countries that have Sharia origin. There are 21 countries here that are Sharia origin countries that would allow for automatic transfer of these doctors into North Carolina. And we got to have some scrutiny on this. And, they will apply with an H-1B under an H-1B once they're offered a job by a rural hospital. And this Sharia practice and this Sharia philosophy is something that's very dangerous. We got to change our legal immigration system to be a little stricter, in fact, a lot stricter on who we're letting in. And are we letting folks in who are adopting and living a philosophy like Sharia law is an absolute anathema to the United States Constitution? We saw what happened at 9/11. We've seen a lot of these shootings because we're letting these folks in. We got to be very, very careful in the fact that they might be a doctor doesn't mean they've been properly vetted. And I'm very, very concerned about that aspect of it, Riley.
So just to specify, first of all, because I have a couple questions for you, Don, what are some of these countries that you're specifically referring to that are Sharia origin?
Well, you start with Northern Africa, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria,
Okay.
Morocco, the Palestinian Authority, Oman. You've got Somalia. I mean, these types
Okay.
of countries, if we were operating under the 1952 Immigration Act, Ilhan Omar would never have been let into the country. But if you're going to have something like this to try to help, rural areas in North Carolina, you got to be a little smarter about who you are vetting and bringing them in.
Okay.
North Carolina has two state-sponsored medical schools: University of North Carolina, my alma mater, and East Carolina, another great medical school. There are other ways that North Carolina can deal with this. We can expand the number of applicants in the medical school. We can expand the number of nurse practitioners that can go into these areas. There are more than one way of dealing with this issue rather than bringing folks in that haven't been properly vetted, which I think is a dangerous practice alongside the questionable professional qualification issue that we got to deal with as well.
That's interesting. And I would agree with that, by the way. But I do wonder then, just to be extra clear about this point too, because this is a really important one that's central to your argument here today. Are you saying there is an expectation for these individuals that once they come here on an H-1B visa to start working in the medical field, that they will eventually become U.S. citizens?
Well, and when you're talking about physicians, the whole purpose of H-1B when George W. Bush brought it in is it doesn't necessarily lead to a pathway to citizenship. That's not what we're seeing. So when you're coming in and you're saying I'm a physician, that certainly would have a stronger argument leading to a pathway to citizenship than someone else coming in under an H-1B. So yes, I'm concerned about that as well. That it's
Okay.
really a backdoor for direct
Yeah.
citizenship
Yes.
using the H-1B process.
Okay. I was just going to ask you about that. So you've identified some really simple and obvious sounding solutions. So that begs a question for these lawmakers who passed this into law earlier this summer. Why are they opting for this route instead of some of the routes that you've just laid out here on the show?
Well, I can't fully speak for them. I mean, they might argue that it costs the state more money, if we added another medical school to, say, a third state-supported institution like Appalachian State or North Carolina State University,
Okay.
the largest university in North Carolina. They may say it's a money thing, but, you can expand the current classes at UNC Chapel Hill in East Carolina, expand it, and have those kids that come into medical school agree to practice in rural areas for a certain period of time. You can expand your nurse practitioner program. That'd be pretty easy to do. And these would be North Carolina students and American doctors and American nurse practitioners who we have a better idea who they are. And I think, you don't, like I said earlier, you don't cure a headache with a cyanide pill. You might cure the headache, but you do too much damage to everything else. And so I think there are more reasonable ways to operate here rather than just opening our door. And if you're going to go with the foreign route, I mean, be careful about who you're bringing in. You know, before the Hart Celler Act, we weren't bringing in tons and tons and tons of people from North Africa. Now we are by design. And that Hart Celler Act in 1965 is where we started to block migration. We've got to fix legal immigration in the United States, which is one of the things I'm going to push for in the United States Senate. We got to go back and we got to be more discerning about who we're bringing in, especially from Sharia countries. I'm not saying everybody coming from the Sharia country is going to go wild on us. We got to be very careful because we know that philosophy is an anathema to the Constitution.
Agreed with you 100%. And since you brought it up as well, we have just about 30 seconds on the clock today, Don. For people who want to know more about your campaign, your platform, and your background, where can they go?
Go to brown4nc.com, brownfornc.com. You'll see our positions statements. We also need conservatives all across the country to chip in. The deep state doesn't like the fact we're running, but we're running a very powerful campaign. Show us a little help, please. brownfornc.com. Donate whatever you can. We appreciate it.
Okay. And thank you for your time today. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, Riley.